There we go.
All right,
So we are recording.
we're recording.
All right, we're finally there. All right, so what I think I want to start out with is you telling us just a little bit about yourself, your name, what year you started pharmacy school, what
Okay.
led you into pharmacy,
Okay.
and then we'll kind of move on from there.
Hi, I am Sierra Mullen. I started pharmacy school in 2016, just graduated May of 2020. I started pharmacy because I had a job in retail already. So I knew I liked the background. So I went ahead and applied. But what got me to that job in the first place is I grew up in the healthcare field. My mom's always worked in some sort of hospital. She's on the business side, but my daycare as a child was the hospital daycare. I was around healthcare. So I knew that was the job field I wanted to enter. And so I really started looking into that. But I'm very squeamish around blood. So anything that actually was hands-on taking care of patients coming in with injuries was not going to work for me. And I looked into radiology, but you have to go through med school. So that was, there was just a whole lot of options ruled out by my blood squeamish. And then I got this job at my hometown pharmacy and I loved it. I loved the interactions with patients. You're one of the more accessible healthcare providers for patients. They can walk right in, ask you any kind of questions, and you can really have an impact on them. And so that's why I decided to apply to pharmacy school.
So when you got into pharmacy school and you got started, how was that kind of transition out of the first 2 years of college into the first year of pharmacy school?
That very first semester of pharmacy school was super overwhelming for me. There were more tests than I think I could even look back on and count, projects, but the difficulty level of the material for me, I was able to handle it and then just used a very color coordinated planner to stay on top of everything. But just there was a very big change coming in from I could study for something the night before as an undergrad and do just fine and still have fun with all my friends all the time and not be super stressed to I had to find my focus and make sure I was taking care of my stuff when it needed to be, and then had fun on like Friday nights and went to dinner with my friends and that kind of thing. But really I changed it around and put school my main focus, which it may not have been the first 2 years.
When PLIQ was introduced to you, I'm not sure if would it have been in your 1.2 or your 2.1. When did you really kind of get information about
So
that?
I actually, Nina Meyer, she's a previous cohort, PLIQ cohort student of yours. She was my roommate for a year when she was going through PLIQ. So I had a little bit of an idea of what it was coming in, but I wasn't sure exactly what it entailed. I just knew she did this thing and then I'd learn more about it. So I think it was introduced during our 1.2 year, but then we applied as 2.1. So you brought it up, you came and talked to us. And I was like, okay, I really like the sound of this. Leadership, innovations, quality outcomes, all things I feel like a healthcare provider should be well versed in. So that's when I really reached out to her and was like, okay, tell me more. What did you do? Did you feel like it was worth it? So I utilized her a lot in deciding whether or not I wanted to apply. But then I thought it was very beneficial just being able to approach you and you explaining how you approached the class and what you wanted your students to get out of it. And also the students in the cohort just above us, because I mean, that's who's going through it after changes. I'm sure it wasn't exactly the same as when Nina had taken it. And so just using those resources to learn more about it and if it would be the right fit for me.
So why did you decide to take on the challenge and apply? What was it that kind of pushed you into that?
When the more I found out I have a solid leadership background. So I was very interested in the innovations and the quality outcomes. And so I just kind of listened to what they said they were doing and the class style and the information they were learning and the opportunities you were providing them for discussions, interactions, projects. I realized that it wasn't information I was really going to get out of other pharmacy classes. There's not really any other didactic courses throughout our pharmacy school career that really target those topics in a way that you come out with more than just an understanding of how it affects pharmacy, but you get more of this healthcare as a whole picture and how I can use it in my personal life. Those aspects, that's what really drew me into actually applying. The challenge part, I liked the classes were in the summer, because then I was able to use that as a main focus instead of trying to juggle all the other pharmacy classes. So I feel like setting it up like that was very beneficial to making sure it wasn't too overwhelming.
Okay. So tell me about some of your experiences in the classes. What did you find interesting? Did you like the structure of the learning? And did you get out of it what you thought you were going to?
I will admit I wasn't 100% sure where I would walk out of this program, how it would really benefit me at the beginning, because I don't think I was 100% sure what I was going to learn. I knew it stood for leadership, innovations, quality outcomes, and those are words that you understand, but the details of it, they weren't super clear, but I enjoyed knowing that I was going to gain something that would benefit me throughout my career. So my favorite class, I would have to say, was innovations, just because I loved the approach of you giving us scenarios that were very obscure to discuss. Like, you could walk into the scenario and be like, oh, absolutely, this is what you should do. And the more the group would talk about it, you'd be like, oh, that's a really good point of view. I don't know. That kind of makes this decision more difficult. And then you gave us the tools to decide as a group, how would you even discuss this? We all have different points of view. What's the best way to not be stepping on somebody else's toes, but making sure your ideas are heard? I feel like you gave us a very good perspective on that, which I have already used throughout my 4th year of pharmacy school, headed into my residency. You work in groups of people that are very different from you, and you have to understand how to work with them and get to a common goal. And I feel like that was the basis of that class that I walked out of very solid in. And I appreciate that. And then in quality, healthcare as a whole is how can you benefit the patient? And we discussed that in pharmacy school as of how can our medications, how can us discussing these medications with the patient benefit them? But in the quality course, it was how can the healthcare entity you're within improve the patient's health? And how can you interact with other healthcare providers? How can you look at projects in the future and make sure what your work is doing is truly benefiting them, instead of this one instance in time having this one conversation with them? And so I feel it's really given me a solid foundation to go forward into my committee meetings that I have to serve on, that are a wide range of people. And some people may not even truly have healthcare backgrounds. They have more of a business background. And making sure that what my goals are can be accomplished, and then I can also listen to other people and relate to their point of view.
So as you went through these and started developing the skills, you also worked with a cohort.
Mm-hmm.
And that cohort, and I think your group was 10. Am I right on that? Or was it a little
12.
over?
It was
12,
10
okay.
from my specific semester and 2 from the semester right behind us.
Gotcha. I have one semester that kind of stood out like that. So 12, and that's a pretty big number of people to try to work with, work well together. Tell me what the experience with the cohort was like during your second and third year, and what kind of tensions might have existed, and how, or if, what we learned in class helped the group work through those.
I think when we came into it, we weren't 100% sure how much of it was going to be group work versus how much of it was kind of like do this on your own and we'll talk about it in class. And so when we came in, it was very apprehensive, like, how's this going to go down? But I think the 10 that were in my semester, we knew what each other was going through. Like, we had the same schedules. We knew when our exams, quizzes, projects were. So we were very understanding of our schedule. And it was, I think, if we had a clash, I would say it was going to be with our schedule was different from the other 2. And so there was 10 of us, 2 of them. And so when you're planning something and 10 people have the same schedule, it's easy to be like, well, 10 of us are going to be able to be there. So what's that matter? And I really think we did a good job at working with that. Mainly making sure that if we wanted to do something, everyone is going to be able to be there. And I think it just took Isaac and Morgan being like, hey, you know, we're part of the group too, we matter, because we hadn't really had that experience with them. And then we were like, oh yeah, like this is one class, this is what we want to do. And then being able to be there in the summer, we knew those weekends that we had to set aside. And when you're in one room together for 12 hours and you eat lunch together and you eat dinner together and you're talking about very personal things, you know, like what personally has affected you for how you're going to approach this project. And so we got to have those conversations about, well, you know, in my past, this happened and I didn't appreciate that. So I wouldn't want to put somebody else through that. And it really gives you a very good perspective on respect for other people when you don't know what they've been through. And I think that was something I gained from having a cohort like that wasn't on the agenda of the classes, you know, that may not have been one of your goals for putting us all together, but that's something I really gained throughout this experience.
Well, part of that and the cohort experience is really about learning how to deal with people. So
Yeah.
A lot of the skills I try to kind of impart, you have that opportunity to practice them just within that group, because every cohort tends to be very diverse in terms of personality and style and approach to things. And as you know, just from being in the workplace, that is a challenging part of work on a regular basis. So taking those skills out, then when you went into rotations, what did you use from the classes in your rotations? Were there specific instances where you're like, oh yes, I can apply what I learned here?
I would say the leadership class gave us a very good foundation on just how to conduct your own behavior in a workplace setting that is conducive to teamwork and getting things done. Because in a pharmacy, it's a very fast-paced setting. You've got a lot going on, and it has to be very organized to keep safety as the first thing in mind. And so just being able to step in to a group of people, you're going to be there for 1 month, and you don't know their processes and they don't know you, and being able to step in, learn the best you can, and actually be an active member in their team for a month is not something I feel like I would have done as well if I hadn't had those conversations on being able to evaluate someone else's personality style. And if they fall into kind of this personality category, well, that's how they're going to approach work. So you need to know what their strengths are to be able to utilize them, not conversations I'd had before. And so being able to just have that observation and say, oh, I understand that if I need to have this conversation with this person, I need to be very willing to listen to them, because they're going to be someone who wants to feel heard. You need to understand that to be able to relay your idea to them, you've got to listen, you've got to be very empathetic, and then at the end come together and make an agreement, versus I need this person to do something and you just walk up and be like, hey, I need this done. They're like, okay, and it affects them none. So being able to really evaluate that was helpful for me. And then also on rotations, you're handed all sorts of different projects. You've got some that you do on site with your preceptor versus some that are purely literature based and you just need to turn in this report, versus one project I had was design a new process for this pharmacy and present that to the preceptor at the end. And I would have been so scared doing that if in our innovations course we hadn't talked about, okay, here is a dilemma in healthcare. Design a process to overcome this. It's not conversations I had at any other point in my pharmacy school classes. And so I think just being able to sit through those and hear from you on how your diverse background has given you many different approaches, and then being able to talk through those with our cohort made me comfortable being on my own somewhere new and still being able to get done what I needed to.
Did you feel like there were certain settings where different types of content, you understood what was being discussed simply because you'd been exposed to it, and had you not been exposed to it, you wouldn't even understand? It wasn't necessarily your project to take on, but you wouldn't have understand what was going on at all?
I think it was on my institutional rotation. It was more of I was shadowing the informatics pharmacist a lot. So his job was looking at how often are meds wasted, keeping those track sheets, how much money are we like just putting down the drain because a dose wasn't used, and if we would have known about it, we could have reused it for a different patient. It was very budget oriented. It was a very budget oriented job. So I don't think I really would have understood a lot of what his goals were if I hadn't gone through quality. The IHI courses really talk about the Lean Six Sigma and how in healthcare that is a huge thing, even if someone doesn't sit down and go, okay, we're going to take a Lean Six Sigma approach.
Right.
It's very talked about in the management, and then it's passed on to their employees. And instead of making everyone learn Lean Six, they just kind of pass on, well, we need to be more conservative. We need to make sure we're not wasting. And I wouldn't have known how to have those conversations with that pharmacist if I hadn't have been through that course.
Do you think
he
that
would have spent a lot more time teaching me than me actively being like, well, I see this. Is that something we could take care of?
Did he notice?
He did. So he kind of was like, you know a bit more about this than I feel like some of the students I've had. And I was able to talk about the program and what we had been given for tools to be able to use in our pharmacy career. And he thought it was awesome.
When you were moving on into the residency process and starting to look and apply for residencies, did this help you stand out? Did anybody already kind of know about it? How did that play into that process of applying and interviewing?
I think I applied to 2 residency programs in Oklahoma and 4 outside of Oklahoma. So I got 6 interviews. So those were the interviews I got, 2 in Oklahoma, 4 in other states. The 2 within Oklahoma are the more common ones that students are applying to. They're closer to home. We hear about them throughout school. I feel like walking into those, they had a little bit of an inkling that, oh, there's a special class you can take, but they weren't 100% sure on exactly what that equipped us with as incoming pharmacists. So it wasn't more of a shock of, oh, what is this on your CV versus just like, tell us a little bit about it. How do you think you'll be able to use it? Versus when I was going out of state, it was very intriguing. They're like, what is this on your CV? Like, how did you do this? How did you find it? Because it's a very unique program. I don't think there's, if any, many other like it. So I really enjoyed just being able to have that, oh, let me tell you, because then it gives you something to be remembered by. But I will remember, just talking about that, a very good piece of advice that was given to me on, don't do this program just because you want to have something that makes you stand out when you leave. You can do plenty of other things that just are a little bit to catch your eye. I think you really want to be able to gain from this program and actually use the things that you will learn when you get out. Otherwise, you won't enjoy sitting through the classes and it won't be an experience that you want to talk about. Because it is, it's work, but at the end of the day, I enjoyed it. And I feel like having classmates who wanted to leave and be able to use these same tools as well was very beneficial.
So now that you're at your residency, because you obviously started a residency, tell us a little bit about the residency and how you think this is going to play into what you do, or how it might have set you apart and actually got you the offer for the residency.
At this specific residency that I'm doing, the interview, so it was the same thing, like, what is this on your CV? And I talked about it, and I picked specific things from each of the classes. Like in leadership, I really felt like I was given a good foundation to interact with other people who have different views from me. In innovations, I feel like I now know how to approach the more difficult projects in a way that I'm not as scared. I'm not as apprehensive about, oh my gosh, I've never done this before. And I kind of can be like, break it down. What can I tackle? How can I make it all come together in the end? And then quality, just being able to have any kind of understanding on how healthcare quality really benefits patients and how to evaluate that is so important to me working within a hospital system. And so just having those bases to talk about, I felt like helped me connect, especially with the managers that I interviewed with. So there's preceptors their more day-to-day may not involve as much of the quality aspect as the managers did, and they were more of the main decision. So having that connection with them was very beneficial. But for me, every residency requires a major project, is what they call it. And throughout the course of the year, you're designing a process on how you want to evaluate some topic that you pick. You have to collect your own data. You have to know what data you want to collect, putting it together, evaluating it, and determining your outcome. I mean, it's a big task that I've never done before. And I think if I hadn't had the background from you that I do, I wouldn't even know where to begin. And their big thing is, this is your project. It is the residence project. Yes, we're here. Yes, we don't want you to flail, but one of the big things we want you to walk out of our residency with is the ability to do this. So you need to kind of do it on your own. And I don't even know if I'd know where to begin if I didn't have the courses that gave me the tools for tackling things I've never done before, being able to research that. But also, I'm going to be going through 8 different rotations while I have longitudinal rotations on top of that. One of them will be management for people that I've known for a few months, and then they'll be reporting to me in a sense, and I will be the one who handles their conflicts. If they have scheduling conflicts, how do I go about making sure that shift is covered? And again, not anything I've ever been put in the role of doing, because I was a technician or an intern and I reported my conflicts to somebody else. So I feel like I've just been given a very good background to be able to learn more instead of trying to be trained more.
So one of the things that you were involved in that not all of the PLIQ students do is the project for PQA, Pharmacy Quality Alliance. So how do you think, what was the value of that to you? Did it have value to you? And how did it play into either or both rotations and residency?
I think about halfway through that project, I wish I wouldn't have done it. But right now, I'm so thankful that I did. Because about halfway through that, we got into our 3rd year of pharmacy school, and I felt like I was drowning, and it was stressful. But I did it with 2 of my PLIQ classmates, and I think at one point we were like, okay, Dr. Moser has told us exactly how to handle this. And so this is our time. This is our time to, how are we innovative in how we approach this? I mean, it was fun for me because it was a chance to actually use the classes that we had gone through, which was very eye-opening into, oh, I've learned this. I know how to do this. This is fun. And then actually getting to complete that project, do poster presentations, write a report over it for publication was exciting. And we achieved this huge task that none of us thought we were going to make it through until the end, and we did. And that was something I was able to talk about during my interviews on what's a challenge you've overcome that you didn't think you were going to make that hill, and just being able to talk up, we didn't give up. We did this whole project. None of us really knew even how to begin. And I think it's also set me up for healthcare. You've always got to be evaluating your surroundings. How can you do better? Which is a very large part of that project. How can we be better for our opioid patients? And that's really given me more of a perspective on how do I want to approach my career? What kind of pharmacist do I want to be? And I know I want to be that pharmacist who's always trying to make things better. And throughout that project, we really had to have that mindset. No, I think it was very valuable to who I was as a student at that time, bringing me more out of my comfort zone and doing something that I'm not sure I would have signed on for if I hadn't been in your class and it wasn't 2 of my PLIQ classmates. But also, I now have more of a comfort level with literature evaluation from the perspective of not just what are their results, but also how does this impact this large group of people?
Did you feel abandoned during that process? Because I know, I mean, my take on those things once they get started is I'm like, I have given you the tools to work on things. So I don't tell you what to do.
Right.
It's specifics. I left a lot of, almost all probably of the details up to the three of you in terms of scheduling, determining deadlines, hitting the deadlines. What was that like for you?
No one had ever really taken that approach with me before, so I had never pushed myself to be my own boss in a sense. Like I had always, if I was doing a project, it was for a class where the professor was like, initial draft here, final draft here, you will present it this date, I want this, this, and this. And so I kind of took it on with a little false confidence because I was like, a project, yeah, like I've done a million of these. I will admit, yes, abandonment may have crossed my mind, but it was good because after that initial, oh my gosh, none of us know what we're doing, we really relied on each other a lot. And that was helpful in determining who had the strengths to do what, which will play into my future of determining if I'm leading a team, who can make, like, how can I make sure someone will be able to get something done? So evaluating that was beneficial, but also just learning that you've got to trust yourself. And it really became our project. And I think that gave us more of a sense of pride in it when we were finished and we kind of sat there and were like, we did that thing. Because yes, it's not something I feel like any of us had ever been through. And really had to take charge of on our own. And so it may not have been initially how I would have done it, but now I know that I can do big tasks like that without someone telling me how to do it, when it needs to be done. And that's helped my confidence in myself a lot.
Yeah, there were only 3 of you that took advantage of that project in your PLIQ cohort. So do you feel like, especially for the residency that you're going to be doing, that set you up uniquely, even from the other PLIQ members, to be able to handle that?
I think there were a few other PLIQ members who may have done research in another area. But I think any sort of research project in general, having that under your belt walking into a residency is vital, just because we are all required to do a research project on our own. So having a background in it where we knew we could come to you if we needed it, but we were also on a campus where there was several tools at our fingertips if we needed it. There were professors who have done research projects, and just them hearing we were in the middle of this and saying, oh, that's fun, like if you need anything, let me know. And you were really surrounded by people who had answers if you had questions, was helpful. And so any advice I give to someone who's behind me in pharmacy school and asks, it does not have to be gathering data research. And that's how I'd always evaluated, like benchtop research. No, you are actually doing something, gathering your own results. So I liked the fact that our research project was more of a literature-based evaluation, because it gave us the sense of our literature evaluation skills improved, which is very important. But also finding those journal articles was stressful. It was just a whole process of, I feel like I have gained so much and will be able to use that in my future that I'm so thankful for.
So you're now at your residency, you're just fixing to get started. And we'll see how, I may come back and ask to revisit this at the end of your residency to see how everything's played out and what you think really kind of helped you as you went through this. What are your goals when you graduate from your residency?
So currently, and again, yes, this may change, I'm considering a second-year residency. So your first year is very general. You have 5-6 week rotations in different areas. Monday, I start my first true rotation, and it's nutrition. So it's 5 weeks in nutrition management. And then I'll go from there to internal medicine. And then I don't have a set schedule after that yet, but on my list, I've got cardiology, transplant, critical care, nephrology. Like, it's very varying in your preceptors, their approach, and what information you're going to be learning. And so your second year, you pick a specialty. And my current love is cardiology. It has been for a long time now, so I don't really know if that will change. We'll see with my experiences, but I think I will be doing this all over again, hopefully in a year, just somewhere else and in a very focused environment. After that, my true goal is to be that critical pharmacist on a team that's heavily valued for our knowledge of not just medications, but also patient care, in evaluating them as a whole person and what do they need to be able to get better here and leave and have a good life. But I also really want to be in a program that either has a residency within itself or takes a lot of students and be able to show them this amazing setting that I have fallen in love with, where how you can impact patients, and also just the joy of having these other healthcare providers ask you these questions. You're the person who has the answers, and being able to help them grow in that area. I never really thought I would want to be, in a sense, a teacher, but I have had some amazing preceptors, and I know that that really set me up for where I'm headed in life. And so I kind of want to be able to be that for somebody else if they need it.
That is an awesome goal, and I can't wait to see you achieve it because I know you will.
Thank you very much.
So let's end with, what advice would you give to pharmacy students that are considering applying to PLIQ? Would you do it again?
I would do it again in a heartbeat. But my advice would just be, make sure it's something you really want to commit to, because this is a cohort-based class. It's small. You're going to get to know each other very well, and your classmates need to know that they can rely on you to be an active part of everything you're going to do. This is not a class that you do just to skate by. You really have got to throw yourself into it and be willing to do the work to get everything out of it that you possibly can. So ask Dr. Moser any question you have about it. She is very passionate about this program, is going to want to make sure you are sure about it whenever you do it. Find the people who are in that cohort right above you. I think they would still be on campus.
They are, yes.
If not, I'm sure they would love for you to email them. You can email me. I would love to talk to anybody about this program, just because it really has given me so much more than I thought it would. And I'm so thankful for that. So yes, I would do it again in a heartbeat, and I would heavily encourage anyone else to do this, but just make sure it's something you want for personal gain and not just something to put on your resume.
Well, I appreciate you taking the time to talk with me today, and take time away from studying for your NAPLEX to spend some time on this. And I wish you the best in your residency.
Thank you very much.